Next, our speaker is Michelle. Michelle has a very beautiful family located in San Diego. Last week, she invited me and our coworkers to her family. She has four lovely boys, and the youngest one, Tristan, was diagnosed with KCNH1 related disorders. We were very impressed and shocked to see how the rare disease can affect a family from so many different aspects. Michelle is committed to driving the research and improving the treatment options. She believes in making a meaningful impact on the lives of children and families. Without further ado.
Well, I have to admit, I was a little intimidated to have to speak right after those two legends. I don't know what I can possibly add that they haven't already done times 10, but I'm incredibly honored to be here. And I hope I can share, Julia and Amber gave a lot of big picture points. They're a lot further along in the process. So I hope I can kind of provide a bit of a case example of what the early stages of what this patient-led drug development can kind of look like. So when my son Tristan was diagnosed in 2021, and we were in that stage of complete shock and grief and knew nothing about rare disease or genetic treatments, someone sent me an article about Amber and how she had raised millions of dollars to cure her kid's disease. And we figured, well, if Amber can do it, we can do it. Why not? And so that's what started this whole process of us diving into this world of rare disease and drug development and trying to move mountains to help Tristan and the other kids with KCNH1 diseases. As it turns out, I cannot really quite compete with Amber's ability or Julia's to fundraise, but we do our best. So I wanted to share our video, although I hope it's gonna play a little better.
This is when we met Tristan for the first time.
Tristan was born November 26, 2019, the youngest of our four boys. From the minute I saw him, I thought something looked a little off about his eyes, but none of the doctors or nurses mentioned anything or seemed concerned, so I didn't think too much more of it. When he was about 4 months old, we started noticing that he wasn't reaching for things or bearing weight on his legs like his brothers had. So we got him into PT and OT and figured he would catch up, as many children do. He's not that far behind physically, so we were completely unprepared for the severity of the diagnosis. The one that hit me hardest was the fact that he would probably never speak. I don't know why, but in all of my wildest, worst case scenarios, it never even crossed my mind that my little boy wouldn't be able to talk to me. It took a long time for it to start to sink in. That first month, every single day, it was a fresh gut punch. I would wake up in the morning, fine for a second, and then suddenly it would all come rushing back in, and it would literally take my breath away. And then, about a month after the diagnosis, he had his first seizure.
When I pulled up to the house, I actually heard the sirens coming down the street as I came in. I'll never forget when I walked in to the house and saw Colt at the top of the stairs, and the look on his face said, Daddy, something's wrong with Tristy. I rushed up the stairs and, of course, fearing the worst and didn't know what I was going to find, and I come in, Michelle's over Tristan, he's on the ground, and she's trying to calm him down, stroking his head and singing to him, trying to get him to start breathing. And I mean, Michelle was a rock star that day. The paramedics and the firefighters, they followed me into the house afterwards, and they got him on oxygen and put him in the ambulance and rushed him to the hospital with Michelle. It's just, that's when it all hit me. This is real. Tristan has this life-shattering disorder, and our family's lives will never be the same.
I've had to almost completely give up my private practice because of all the therapies and doctor appointments and exercises. He's in therapy 5 days a week, hours a day, but the progress is painfully slow. As he's gotten older, it's become more and more clear how impaired his little brain is. He works so hard to learn things, but even when something finally clicks, and he's been doing it consistently for weeks, it can suddenly vanish. And if you ask him to try to say or do something that he used to know, it totally breaks my heart. He's looking, his eyes are darting all over your face, his mouth is moving, he's breathing hard.
I mean, he's trying so hard, he just can't get his body to cooperate.
Tristan is the sweetest, most loving little person. He's always toddling over to lay his head in our laps or grab us as we're walking by. When he's alert and engaged, he's such a happy, affectionate little love bug. But a lot of the time, he's just off in his own world, kind of checked out, zoned out, like at Christmas. All the other kids were so excited and tearing into presents, and he's just sitting there, staring off into space. I just want so desperately for him to be able to participate in things with our family and enjoy things with the rest of us.
Thinking about the future is pretty overwhelming. I mean, these kids can't ever be left alone. They can't feed themselves. They can't ever even be potty trained.
And it just gets harder as they get older. I mean, just imagine having a Kevin-sized toddler for the rest of your life. It becomes very difficult to do anything as a family. We see with other families, they try to do something as simple as going to a game, and they end up spending the whole time trying to keep their full-grown kid from grabbing other people's food or climbing over the seats. It would be one thing if these kids were happy and healthy overall, but it doesn't seem like most of them are. Many will go months where they only sleep a few hours a night. Lots of the kids are on anxiety meds for agitation, and some will go through periods where they have hours-long crying spells every day. And of course, can be impossible to figure out the problem because they can't tell you if they're in pain or what's going on. After spending every spare minute for almost a year researching KCNH1 and contacting scientists all over the world, we've learned that there's a clear path forward for KCNH1. It's a very good candidate for gene expression therapy. In other similar disorders that have been treated with this therapy, kids have gone from wheelchair-bound to walking, nonverbal to verbal, multiple seizures a day to seizure-free.
The technology exists, but the funding doesn't. As far as traditional drug development is concerned, KCNH1 is too rare to care. That's why it's up to us to make this happen. We need to raise $1 million to cure KCNH1.
There we go. All right. Thank you, Kevin. Anyway, so exactly a year ago, finally, after a long time, we finally had our very first ever KCNH1 patient-derived iPSC line. And KCNH1 is an ultra-rare disease. There's now maybe 100 patients diagnosed globally and only a handful of researchers studying it around the world. But as soon as we had those cells completed, we started shipping them off to anyone and everyone who would take them. So I have a little schematic here just to share the far-reaching impact of just one asset, the very first asset our foundation developed. So we developed the patient-derived iPSCs along with sibling control from Tristan's next oldest brother. We sent them to, let me get my little, there we go. Hello? Oh, there we go. Can you see it?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, anyways, we sent them to, okay, I guess it doesn't show up on my slideshow. Anyways, we sent them to IXLs, we sent them to Al George's lab at Northwestern, and we sent them to our KCNH1 expert at the Max Planck Institute in Germany, who's been studying the channel for 30 years. And in order to avoid the headaches and delays of trying to import into the EU again, that researcher was able to share them to another research team in Italy that is studying the ciliary effects of KCNH1 mutations.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Maybe. Yes.
No, nothing's showing up.
Oh, it shows up from the, oh, it
Oh,
does show up. It does show up. There you go.
Yay. I need an angle.
Maybe you can stand.
Oh, I have to hold it down. Okay, there we go. So anyways, our researcher here at the Max Planck Institute shared them to Italy, as well as to another team of channelopathy specialists in Germany at Tübingen. And they were able to develop the first KCNH1 neural networks and able to see a phenotype. And then meanwhile, Al George generated an isogenic control for us, which obviously is a big step up on the sibling control. And he sent them back to us here at IXLs for us to generate our neurons and our brain organoids. And after connecting through our foundation, he also generously shared that isogenic control to the team at Tübingen. And they were planning to have to do an isogenic control. That obviously saved them a lot of time and expense. And they are now on the verge of being able to start drug screening in that model system. And then finally, just a couple weeks ago, we got a request from a lab in Australia that focuses on animal toxin therapeutics. Pretty cool. If you have a chance, look up, there's an article. They apparently have like 500 venomous animals in the lab, and it's pretty crazy how they like manually milk the venoms from snakes, etc. Anyways, they have a couple of spider toxins that potently inhibit the KCNH1 potassium channel. And so we're really excited to see how those studies will go. So just a little snapshot of the work that our foundation has done in 2 years. We generated the first ever patient-derived KCNH1 iPSCs, shared them across soon to be 3 continents, 3 countries, 5 research groups in less than a year, resulting in the creation, so there's our iPSCs, resulting in the creation of the first KCNH1 neurons, neural networks, and brain organoids, disease model systems. We also spearheaded the development of a KCNH1 knock-in mouse model that will be made available to the research community. We've also funded, in terms of drug development, treatment development, we have funded a repurposed drug screen and designed, manufactured, and screened a small batch of ASOs. And both of those projects yielded promising hits that have been shared to numerous partners and will now be validated in the CNS model systems. We also plan to launch a base editing project here at IXLs in the next few months, and we're really excited about that modality. After connecting with our organization and learning of our progress on disease models, we now have 4 research teams that are pursuing large grants for KCNH1 studies, which is amazing because those are KCNH1 research dollars that I don't have to fundraise. And we now have also 2 industry partners who have launched exploratory KCNH1 drug development programs. So in the span of 2 years, from having 0 disease model systems other than simple transfected cell lines, and having 0 efforts underway to develop treatments for KCNH1, we now have multiple in vitro systems at multiple labs around the world and multiple treatment modalities that are being actively investigated. Unfortunately, at home, things have not been going so well for Tristan. As I had mentioned in the video, if you could hear it, there are a lot of the KCNH1 kids will go through phases where they're just really distressed. They spend hours a day crying. And unfortunately, that started happening for Tristan within the last year. And it just is completely heartbreaking for us to see him suffering and have no idea how to help him. And, you know, it's really all encompassing when he's in one of these phases. We have to either just sit with him and try to comfort him or try to carry on and get things done. But we really have not learned how to do that. It just basically wrecks us to see him like that. And we know, you know, if he could even so much as point to a body part that's in pain or nod or shake his head to answer questions, it would be completely life-changing. You know, just the ability to communicate even a little bit would completely change his and our family's life. We have been working intensively for years now to help Tristan be able to communicate with an iPad communication device. And this was this past summer when, for the first time ever, he independently, unprompted, was able to ask for something. He asked for some water. And it showed us that he actually does get the concept that he can use this to express himself to us. But like so many of his other communication skills, he showed it a couple times and then he lost it. And so we're just left, you know, imagining how frustrating it must be for him. We know he understands so much more than he can convey, than he can express, and how frustrating it must be for him to not even be able to express his most basic needs, to be basically trapped in his body. Then this fall, we had a really terrifying seizure relapse. He had been on an investigational repurposed drug and seizure-free for 18 months. All of his seizures have been triggered by illness. That's why you'll probably see me wearing my mask, because we all try to protect him. But he got a stomach bug, and each of his seizure episodes is just more and more intense and dangerous. So he had 9 seizures over the course of 3 days, 4 days in the hospital, and a just really, really rough time recovering. It took weeks and weeks for him to get back to himself. And, you know, so it just leaves us wondering, is it a dose issue? Is there some kind of compensatory mechanism kicking in? We just know so little about these complex CNS disorders, and we're hoping that these model systems can help us learn a lot more. These are pictures from our vacation this past summer. Tristan unfortunately spent the vast majority of the trip cooped up in the living room of the Airbnb. And of course, one of us always cooped up with him because he would just get so upset whenever we tried to take him out. And then the last day, we took him to a different beach. For whatever reason, he suddenly loved it. And I can't even describe what that meant for him to be able to actually enjoy something, for our whole family to be able to enjoy an activity together. That's one of the few times that's ever happened in his life. And we just, you know, we know if Tristan was able to share more with us about his needs, what he likes, how we can help him, that we would get a lot more days like this with big smiles, with joy, with him being able to really participate in life more. And of course, we all know this is not just about Tristan, right? Tristan represents millions of kids and adults with rare diseases all around the world. And we know that if we are successful, these targeted genetic treatments are so cutting edge, and there are so few of them in existence yet. We know that if we are successful in developing something that helps Tristan or Maxwell or any one kid or any one gene, that is a significant advance for the whole field. And I mean, you know, I'm sure you guys all know Mila's story, that she was the trailblazer for personalized ASOs. And I know Julia's frustrated that we haven't made more progress, but her story has inspired so many people and had such a wide-ranging impact. And so I want to thank you all for being here, for dedicating your time and your talent to the rare disease community and helping us make a difference for our kids and all the other rare patients out there.
Thank you, Michelle. It's always very inspiring to see a lot of parents from totally different backgrounds. They're starting to, in a very short time frame, they become a PhD scientists. So it's a very, very powerful story from all these 3 moms. They are all my heroes.